Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar this afternoon. I'm Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools, and this afternoon we're going to be looking at mastering SharePoint permissions with our product DeliverPoint. And we're going to first of all just jump in and do a quick introduction to Lightning Tools for those of you who are not familiar with us as a company. I'll do a bit of an intro to myself as well, and then we're going to jump in to DeliverPoint. And we've got a lot to cover in terms of what gaps are there inside of Microsoft SharePoint when it comes to permissions management, both for the business user and also for SharePoint administrators as well. And then we're going to jump into having a look at DeliverPoint, what that can do for you, and how it can basically make your life a lot easier when it comes to permissions management, and obviously end up with a more secure environment. And we'll be doing a lot of that also, not just with Copilot in mind, but we will be talking about Copilot and how that can also be challenging when it comes to SharePoint permissions, and how DeliverPoint may also be able to fit into that story for you when it comes to being prepared for a Copilot rollout. But permissions is not all about Copilot, so this entire session is not about that specifically. It's also about SharePoint permissions and sharing in general. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of this session. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through as well. I won't be opening up the mics for everybody just because that will interrupt my flow. But feel free to use the chat and the Q&A for any questions that you might have. And at the end of the session, I will be reading out some of those questions and making sure that we can answer this. There is a question already. I see that from Fiona. So thanks, Fiona. Yeah, we are recording, and this is going to be available on our website, and you'll also get a link to the recording as well sent out to you tomorrow. It sometimes goes out sooner if I don't make any errors, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so we've got a lot to cover, like I say, so let's get going. So first of all, title of today's event is Mastering SharePoint Permissions with DeliverPoint. We're really going to be focusing in on those site owners with providing actionable permission reporting and management tools, specifically around SharePoint permissions and sharing. So before we get into that, just again, a quick intro to Lightning Tools. So we're a company in the UK. We're headquartered in Leicestershire. We also have our office over in Orlando, Florida as well. We've been established now for 17 years. I'm a Microsoft 365 MVP, have been for 7 years. And for about the last 20 years now, or 21 years, I think, I've also been really focused day to day on Microsoft SharePoint, and a lot of that has been permissions specific as well. We as a company are also ISO 27001 and ISO 9001 certified. There's probably going to be questions about where our data is stored and things like that. And one of the nice things about the way that we provision our tools is the fact that everything runs inside your tenant, and that there isn't actually anything stored on our side in our cloud or anything like that. We be able to discuss that as we go through. But nonetheless, we are also ISO 27001 certified, which should provide some confidence if DeliverPoint is a product that you think would suit your needs today. And again, we've also been a Microsoft partner for about the last 17 years, and working very, very closely with Microsoft throughout that time. So subject today, like I say, is all about permissions, and we're going to kick things off with why permissions are really so important. Why do we need to take this subject seriously with inside of SharePoint? Just when it comes down to direct permissions, when it comes down to things like Active Directory security groups and so on, but also external sharing or even internal sharing, and the effects that may have, not just again on Copilot and using that, but also things like search and just navigating content, and inadvertently having content shared with you. So we'll be having a look at why it's critical to make sure that that is managed. We're also going to take a look then at DeliverPoint. So of course, that's going to be the meat of today's webinar. We're going to be focusing nearly all of it on DeliverPoint, and it's mostly all going to be live demo as well. So not just screenshots. We will be going through the entire product, and I'm going to cover as much of that as I possibly can. Um, we are, any of you that is an existing customer using DeliverPoint today, towards the end, probably the last 10-15 minutes, we're also going to be taking a look at some of the new features that we're rolling out shortly. So this is around auditing and also about who's accessed content where there may have been an overshared item or an overshared site or something along those lines. It's important to know who's actually accessed it in the meantime. And like I say, at the very end, there's also going to be a chance for you to ask any questions. So feel free to drop those into the chat as we go, and I'll make sure that I call those out at the end of the event. Okay, so problems. So the problems in SharePoint when it comes down to promotions. And what Lightning Tools does, by the way, as a company in all of our products, not just DeliverPoint, we have a portfolio of products, and everything is about making your life easier, making you more efficient, making you more productive when you're using Microsoft SharePoint. And a lot of that is based on the business user, but also sometimes IT as well. And DeliverPoint isn't any different from that. So what we tend to do as a company is we look for these gaps and look how we can improve them for you using really an inexpensive tool that can be installed inside of your environment. So common challenges, and we will be demonstrating some of these as well. Of course, overshared is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but overshared content, and this could be due to a number of different reasons. I'm going to show you how easily we can overshare content inside of Microsoft SharePoint, and it's not just down to site owners, it's not down to IT, it's just your general members of a site and how easily they can access, or sorry, they can share content that they have access to. So this could be through sharing with individuals, it could be sharing with guest accounts, but what we don't or shouldn't overlook is even people inside of our organization. So quite often somebody may share something with the everyone except external users group, or with anyone if it's a sharing link, and again other people inside of our organizations. This can lead to oversharing, and not just in that one step. It might be that I'm a member of a site, and I see a document that I think I'm going to share with somebody who needs access to it. So I'll share with them. They may find it interesting. They could share with the everyone group. So even as a person with edit permissions, you can share content, and this is a sort of knock-on effect that it has throughout the SharePoint environment, and that's why quite often there's a permissions mess that we need to untangle. Um, Sometimes there's a lack of visibility into sharing links and permissions as well, and this can be for all sorts of different reasons. One of them, the main one, is you have no bulk permissions management or no bulk permissions reporting inside of SharePoint natively. So yeah, trying to span a site and its content, or even just multiple files and folders, or a folder and all of its subfolders, those scenarios don't exist when it comes down to the business user being able to report on permissions in the SharePoint user interface. And because of that, quite often it's assumed that people may not have permissions, and therefore we grant additional permissions. And the reason why it's assumed that they may have permissions is because we don't actually have that visibility. It might be they're inside an Active Directory security group, or an Entra security group, and we can't see that using SharePoint. So therefore we go and share when perhaps they already had access anyway, and maybe a lower level of access. It could be that they had read permissions through a security group, and now by sharing with them, we've just given them edit permissions, which means that they can start sharing and so on as well. So yeah, there's limited out-of-the-box tools for site owners. I've kind of just said that. Also, no bulk reporting and management of permissions, and even as an administrator, although as of a few weeks ago, things have improved dramatically from your standpoint, you don't just have to use PowerShell now. There are some tools that we're going to be getting into today, such as SharePoint Advanced Management and the data access governance. But even then, they're not granular tools. They're very high level, and they sort of highlight the problem, but they're not giving you the ability to get in and fix the problem and take action against the challenges that you face around oversharing. So this slide actually was taken directly from Microsoft Ignite just a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the data access governance and also the new Purview tools when it comes to permissions management, permissions reporting, and they've actually highlighted some of these things that I've just highlighted as to why oversharing can occur. So one reason is when you create a site. When you create a site, you've got the option of creating a private site or a public site, and quite often public is chosen. Maybe deliberately or maybe inadvertently, and that means that anybody in the organization can access that site, and of course its content. So that content is going to show up in search. You'll be able to navigate to that site, and if you ask a question through Copilot, through a prompt of anything that is contained inside that site, it's going to give you the answer. So even if you're not necessarily looking for something that may be served from that site, it's going to give you that answer and you can't unsee it. So yeah, that could be an issue. The default sharing option is everyone. Now, of course, this can be tied down. You can limit it on a site-by-site basis. You can actually limit sharing with everybody across the board in Microsoft SharePoint. We'll be having a look at a way you can do that as well. But that in itself is quite a challenge. If we stop people from sharing, then they'll find another way to share. It might be that they download a file themselves and stick it in Dropbox, or they email it through their personal email account, or something like that. So there's a balance to be had where we can allow people to share content, but in a controlled way, and that's something that DeliverPoint will help you to be able to do. There's also broken permission inheritance. So the more we break permission inheritance, the more places we have to manage and report on permissions. And again, without that ability to bulk report, this is going to be challenging, and so challenging, in fact, that we just don't do it. It's just too overwhelming to try and control that amount of content. There's the everyone except external users domain group is often used as well. And finally, if you're not using sensitivity labels, start to think about it, because this is going to be the way that even tools like Purview will be able to help you control oversharing going forwards. So we need to make sure that we've got the sensitivity labels in place, so we can set policies against those sensitivity labels, stopping people from being able to share things, perhaps if it is marked as confidential. But equally, Copilot will acknowledge some of the sensitivity labels and won't serve answers to you to a prompt if it has been marked with an appropriate label. So that's come from Microsoft. That's so it's not just me. This is Microsoft highlighting these issues. So we're just going to have a quick look at some of those gaps before we dive into DeliverPoint. So I'm just going to bring up my SharePoint environment now. And here inside of SharePoint, we've got a human resources site. It contains a subsite, and the permissions are actually not that bad at the moment. There's just a handful of users, just to explain some points inside my demonstration. And when I say handful, we're talking maybe about 15 users. Inside your organizations, you're probably going to have thousands, and you're going to have a lot more content as well. But yeah, just to show you what's going on here, if we click into the top right hand corner and come down to site permissions, so I'm doing this as a site owner, what you'll notice is I've got the 3 default groups, and we can try to determine as a business user who's got access to this particular communication site based on this side panel here. So we have the person with full control, that's me, who I'm currently signed in with. I've then got accounts payable. Now, accounts payable is a security group. And one of the challenges has always been inside of SharePoint that you cannot enumerate security groups. So we don't know who's inside that group as a business user. We have to fully trust that whoever's managing these security groups is managing that well, and we've got the right people in that group, and maybe we've got a good understanding as to who's inside that group as well. But yeah, we have no visibility of it. I can see that demo user 9 is directly a SharePoint member. So they're inside the members group, and there are currently no site visitors, so nobody with read access to this site. Now we can jump into the advanced permission settings. In here, you're going to find the classic view. We'll see those same 3 SharePoint groups: the owners, the members, and the visitors. We can navigate into those, and we can again see the same information. We can see that there's a user in here called demo user 9. There's also accounts payable, which if we click onto that, it doesn't show me the members. We can just see the fact that the group there is listed. There is, however, if I just go back a couple of levels, a check permissions. So check permissions has always been around, and what that allows me to do is put a user in here and hit check now, and it will tell me whether they're permissioned or not. And it does actually say that user is not permissioned. So we could go through and try another one. And fortunately, all my users all begin with the same name. So bingo, we found one. Demo user 4 has edit permissions through the HR members group, so we can only assume that that permission is through that accounts payable group that we can't see the members of. So nobody's going to use this to go through and check every employee inside their organization and try to determine what permissions they have. By the time you finish that, it's going to be out of date. Yeah, we're going to just end up with starting all over again. The other challenge is within the content. Now, there's not really much content inside this communication site, so I'm just going to jump down here into a subsite, which is called employment contracts or employee contracts. And if I go into the document library here, you'll see that there's a few employee contracts. And what we could do is just click onto this manage access option to share. And we can also hover over the ellipsis and click manage access to see who this was shared with. And so what that's showing me is that there's 2 owners of this content, there's 3 groups permissioned in different ways, and there's 2 links. One is shared with anyone, and the other one is shared with everybody inside the organization. That's the name of my tenant lightning tools product demo. And of course, we could stop sharing and so on from there. The challenge is you can only do this on one file or one folder at a time. If I have 2 files selected, that manage access option disappears entirely. So we can't control that, unfortunately. Okay, so they're the challenges for the site owner, and really the same challenges exist for IT as well, because well, before SharePoint Advanced Management, really PowerShell was your only option. So you could create some scripts, you could run through the content and produce some reports, maybe in CSV files or something along those lines. But now you do have the data access governance. I say you have it. It was available for approximately the last year as something that was available for $3 per user per month in your tenant. That's all of the users in the tenant. The announcement at Ignite is that this is going to be available with Copilot licenses and also with E5 as well. So what this allows you to do is look for sharing links. So if we have a look for sharing links, we can go in and view the reports here. You can see this one was updated 3 minutes ago. I'm happy about that because I kicked it off and was hoping it'd be done in time. So if I click onto the anyone links here, you can see that it's found 1 link. Now it's found 1 link in 396 sites. Now I know that there's a lot more than that. There's a lot more anyone links inside my environment. The challenge is that it's only looking in the last 28 days. So what we're not looking at is, well, what was actually shared a long time ago? I'm about to roll out Copilot. I don't know what was actually rolled out maybe 60 years ago or shared 60 days ago with the anyone group. So that does give me a link to say that there's three links identified inside that site. So I could go into that site and determine where those links might be. But at the moment, the challenge still exists that if that document library inside that site contains thousands of documents, I've still got to go one by one in order to be able to find out, well, whereabouts are those links because of that manage access option. So that may improve in the future, but currently that's the way that it is. So we've also got the people in your organization links. So this is when you share something and you say anybody in the organization can see this. So it's not finding any of those because again, it's just looking in the last 28 days. We can also look at specific people links shared externally, and again, same problem. It's not looking beyond 28 days, so it's not finding any in that environment. There's also sensitivity labels. So here I've got some content marked as confidential or highly confidential. I've run the report a day ago. We can download that report. So if we have a look at what's been marked as highly confidential, we can open that up here. And it's a CSV file, and it can contain up to a million items. I think it's 10,000 SharePoint sites can be listed in here. And what it's giving you is the URL and how many labels were found inside that site that were marked as highly confidential. So again, you've then got to go and find them, and maybe somehow record the fact that you fixed the problem, if there is one at all. But that's yeah, just showing you the highly confidential files. So this is generally what we've got to work with from the data access governance. You also have the content shared with the everyone except external users group as well. So that was also updated a day ago, but also looking just inside the last 28 days. So these reports, they take between 24 and 72 hours, depending on how big your tenant is, and you can only run them so many times within a certain period. So if I try to run all now, yeah, it says that each report can only be run once within 24 hours, and those have already run within the last 24 hours. So I'd need to wait for that period to end before I can run it again effectively. So these are some of the challenges that we are faced with when it comes to permissions management. So what we're going to do is have a look at what the solution is, and take a look at DeliverPoint and how that can help you address some of these gaps inside of your environment. So it's just a handful of slides before we jump into a demo. So yeah, what we allow you to do as a business user, so to define a business user, we're really looking at site owners, site collection administrators. You'll be able to really have a, so let me just step back for a moment. As an organization, you'll be able to have a culture where site owners take security seriously. And we're not just waiting for a report to land on your doorstep to say, have a look at the CSV file and fix the permissions. What we're going to be providing you with is the ability to be conscious about the security across your files, across your site, and then all of the content that you manage to make sure that at any one time you can know who's permissioned on that content, what sharing links have been shared, and so on. That's the main aim for this feature with DeliverPoint. They're also contextual, so you're not having to go into a separate tool. You can run the permission reports from within the library, within the site, and so on. And you can take action as well against those reports. So if I see somebody that I feel shouldn't be permissioned, I can delete them directly from within inside the report, or I could transfer their permissions to somebody else directly from within inside that report as well. You've got the ability to bulk report and bulk manage. That goes for direct permissions and so on, not just within a site, but across sites as well that you have access to manage. And you can also schedule those reports. So if you want to have them land on your doorstep every month or every week, that's a possibility. And it's not just a CSV file either. Again, you've got an actionable report that you can go through and manage directly. If you're a site collection admin or a SharePoint admin, you can also manage permissions either on demand or through scheduling across large scopes as well. So we'll be able to show you how that can be done. And it's not just high level. It's not just saying there's a problem in here in this site because there's oversharing going on. It's actually showing you where those permissions are, who's got permissions, and what sharing links exist, and give you the ability to manage it as well. And also, DeliverPoint is available for every version of SharePoint, on-prem or online. It doesn't matter whether it's E3, E5, or just business standard. You'll be able to use DeliverPoint as well. So the actionable reporting, again, you can bulk manage, bulk report, copy, transfer, delete, revoke permissions within inside the sites themselves. You've also got the sharing link reporting that you can use cleanup actions against as well. And yeah, overall, I think I've said this enough. What we're doing here is empowering both the site owners and also the administrators to really get a handle on those permissions and manage them effectively. There is an important bullet point at the bottom here. You can't do anything that you can't already do inside of SharePoint. We're running with the user's context. So if you are a site owner, you'll be able to manage just that site. If you are a site collection admin for several site collections, you'll be able to manage permissions across those site collections. But yeah, if you're not, if you only have edit permissions, you won't be able to use DeliverPoint to report and manage those sites, and it's just not going to show up inside the user interface for those. So let's jump in and take a look at DeliverPoint. And again, we're just going to bring up the same SharePoint site. Oh, something went wrong there with data access governance. I hope it doesn't go wrong with DeliverPoint. Let's see. Yeah, let's just navigate to my human resources SharePoint site here. And in here, I'm just going to show you some of the end user type reporting that we have. So in the top right hand corner, you'll notice that there's some shortcuts to some of the different reports. One of them is discover permissions. So running the discover permissions report, it's immediate. We're not waiting 24 hours or 72 hours. It's immediately showing me everybody that is permissioned within inside this site, and it is everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's through a security group, sharing link, or whether they're a dead account like this one. It's going to show everybody. You'll see here demo user 6 is permissioned through that accounts payable Active Directory security group, and that Active Directory security group is nested inside the SharePoint group. So it includes everything that we need to know. And when I mentioned about the actionable reports as well, with that row highlighted, I can come up to the actions menu here and we can make changes. In fact, I wouldn't be able to make changes to that one because it's through a security group. So let's just choose a different one. So let's choose demo user 9 here, who I know is permissioned through a Microsoft 365 group or a SharePoint group. So from the actions menu, I could say I want to transfer those permissions across to another user because demo user 9 may be leaving the department, going to work somewhere else or whatever. And I want them to take over from demo user 9. So I'm just going to transfer the permissions between those accounts. And I can do it to include subsites as well as lists and folders and items. And we've also got safety net as well, where we can roll back these permission changes if we want to. And I can modify the group memberships of SharePoint groups and M365 groups, not security groups. So if I run that, you'll see that that goes through, scans multiple items. It's made a modification to the members group. So let's just close that down and we'll refresh our report. And you can see here demo user 10 now has those permissions, and demo user 9 is just stuck with that limited access that they had anyway before. Okay, so that's the actionable reports. We can not just transfer permissions, but we can delete permissions, we can grant additional permissions, we can copy permissions, and we can also revoke permissions. Revoke is different from delete, by the way. If you have multiple permissions assigned, I can remove some of them, but I don't necessarily have to remove all permissions from a user, so I can cherry pick which permissions I do want to remove. You can also save these as a template. So if this is a report that I'm going to run regularly, I can save it as a template here. I can export the report if I do want a copy of it in a CSV file or anything like that. I could also take a snapshot. So if I've got all the permissions as they should be, as I want them, and I want to compare against this in the future, what I could call this is my HR permissions snapshot. Maybe give it a month or date or something like that. I could say, yeah, include the subsites, include the lists and the folders and the items, take that snapshot, and we'll compare with this a little bit later on. But what we can also do is make a whole bunch of permission changes now, see how it's changed since the snapshot was taken, and then we can put those back again by recovering permissions if we want to. So once you've cleaned up, you've got that ability to revert back again, which is super useful. Okay, I see there's questions being raised in the chat and Q&A. I will get to those very, very shortly. I'm just going to check everybody can hear me okay, and so on. Actually, I just did notice one question there from Gary. Why is the rollback not on by default? You can make it on by default if you want to. Yeah, you can switch that on. You can even hide some of those options as well, so people can't change them. That can be done through PowerShell. Okay, so we've had a look at the discover permissions. That can also be run in the content itself. So if we just come down here to employee contracts again, into the subsite where we've got some content. So these employment contracts here. I showed you how we could only access one file at a time when it comes to the managing access. But if I select multiple files or folders in here, we've still got discover permissions and we've got sharing link reports across those multiple items. Now, it doesn't just have to be 4 or 5 items that I have. You can actually run this against the entire site if you want to, which I'll also be getting in to show you. But what you'll see here is that there's a contrast between the file names as well. So Diana Torres, her contract is grayed out, whereas Alice Johnson's is in full color. The reason for that is Alice Johnson's contract has broken permission inheritance. So we can see that straight away. And therefore we know that there's some changes going on in terms of permissions, but also it shows me that I could manage the permissions on there if I want to as well. And what you also notice is there's an anyone link. So I can see that somebody created an anyone link on Alice Johnson's contract, and sure enough, that is shared with anyone. So that is an issue because that's going to show up in Copilot or wherever we're looking to ask questions or perform searches and so on. So that's the sort of thing that actually right away, if I did see that, I could go through and remove it using the permissions management. I'm not going to actually do it because I want to show you somewhere else where the links will show up. So in fact, I could run that from here. I could highlight the content I'm interested in, click sharing links. This is going to find any sharing links with inside everything that I highlighted. Yeah, we can see actually there's Alice Johnson's contract has actually been shared multiple times. These were with people in the organization, anyone. We also have people in the organization again, another anyone link, and this one had specific people named. One thing you'll notice about that is there's two Brett Lonsdales in here. It looks like one of these is a bit sneaky because this Brett Lonsdale is actually the internal user, and I can tell that because it's in the standard font. Whenever there's an italic font used, it means it's the external user, guest account. So if we have a look at that one, for some reason, I've shared Bob Smith's contract with my personal Gmail account. So I guess if I get shut out of this tenant, if I leave the organization, I'll still have my little backdoor in through that Gmail account to Bob Smith's contract for whatever reason. Okay, so that's the sharing links report. You can run it against multiple files like that, or I could also run it at the site level. So if you've got lots of subfolders and so on, even multiple document libraries, you can just hit the sharing links in the top right hand corner, and that's going to scan the whole site for me and find all the sharing links that happen to exist and give me the ability to manage them as well. So that anyone link there, I could just simply remove it immediately because again, these are actionable reports. It's not just giving me the information. We can solve the problem as well. Okay, so that's the sharing links, and I also want to show you the permissions summary. So the permissions summary will give me an idea of everything that is going on permission-wise for this site. So if I'm doing a sort of site access review, what we could do is come in here, run the permissions summary report. So it's just scanning the site for me. And there we go. What it's given me is a summary detail of how many unique items there are, how many unique lists, how many sharing links. We can see where content is being used. Content has the most sharing links or direct permissions, and we've also got sensitivity labels showing up as well. So I can see that there's one item marked as confidential, so I might drill into that by clicking it and seeing who's got permissions to that confidential information, and yeah, make sure that of course, that being confidential, that is tied down as it should be. Okay, so any of these links we can drill into, and when I see things like Ian Wright's contract, what we could do is compare that maybe with Alice Johnson's contract. So what we could do is come and compare those permissions and see what differences there are. And there's two sharing links on Alice Johnson's contract that don't happen to exist on Ian Wright's. That's the difference. That's what it's saying. They have unique permissions there. And notice how we could also compare with multiple if we want to. So I could choose multiple files and start to get this matrix built up as to where those sharing links are or direct permissions and so on. Okay, and I just want to show you how easily oversharing can occur as well. I'm just going to switch to a different user here. I'm going to switch to, in fact, before I switch, I'm going to just show you the Discover Permissions report. The only people with full control is Ara and the Lightning Tools account that I'm signed in with. We've got demo user 6 and demo user 5 with edit permissions. They're the only permissions that they have. So what I'm going to do is actually come in as demo user 6 here. So you can see I'm signed in as demo user 6. Let's just give that a refresh as well. As a user with edit permissions, I can hit the site access in the top right hand corner and accidentally do this. So I'm going to share with everyone. Okay, so let's just go back once more to my account where I'm signed in as Lightning Tools, and let's again just give that a refresh. And we'll discover permissions. And you can see we've now got 2 pages of permissions because everybody now has access through the Everyone group. Okay, and the default was edit, so everybody can share as well, which isn't usually the case. The default is usually read, but there we go. So what does that mean for the subsite? Well, let's just jump down to the employment contracts subsite, because that was on a communication site, was quite normal for the Everyone group to be included, but there's a subsite to that communication site, and if we have a look at that subsite and maybe have a look at some of these contracts, let's have a look at who's got permissions to those. And sure enough, it's everyone. So that's how easily we can overshare things. It may not be deliberate, and it may go unnoticed for quite some time, and have this information showing up. And that's why we need to be security conscious as a site owner when it comes to managing our sites properly. Okay, so everything we've seen there is focused on the site owner. I'm just going to jump back in and have a look from the perspective of a site collection admin, or from a site owner, from a SharePoint admin point of view. And I'm accessing DeliverPoint. I'm going to make it full screen for you. And in here, you'll notice that we've got a legend that is displayed, and that's explaining our tree view that we can open up on the left-hand side here. So it's security trimmed, but what it's showing me is all of the different site collections inside of my environment that I can manage. And right at the very top, we've got the current site that I'm on, which is the human resources site still. So we can drill into that and see the subsite, employment contracts, the lists and libraries, etc. And then I've got all of the other site collections as well, which are all in alphabetical order. Now you can search on those. So if I search on the word sales, I'm finding everything sales related. If we collapse that again, I'll just focus on this one. So I could choose maybe the entire site collection and do a Discover Permissions Advanced. And one of the things I can do in here is include everything where permissions is unique. I could include the sensitivity labels if I want to, and so on. If we know we've got some large groups as well, like the Everyone group, I can say at the moment I don't want to see the members of those groups. I just want to see the fact that the group is permissioned. But what this has done is given me all of the permissions on the sites, on the lists, and on all the items. And even though I said don't enumerate the AD groups, because this could be quite a large report, I can still drill into them. So if I want to know who's inside accounts payable, I can hit get members and see who's inside that group. And therefore I can see that they have edit permissions to the employment contracts and so on. Okay, so you've got the Discover Permissions Advanced, you've got Sharing Links Advanced as well. There's other things that we can run at the site collection level here. We can have a look at unique objects. So we can just say, I want to have a look at any hub sites, associated sites, or subsites that have unique permissions. I also want to include any lists, folders, or items. We could also search for sensitivity labels as well, and perform that report and it just brings back everything with unique permissions from within inside that site collection. And it's deliberately small just to manage this content. We can also have a look for dead accounts. Now, I happen to know there are none in there, so I'm just going to switch to Lightning Tools Sales, and I'm just going to run the dead account report on this one. What we refer to as a dead account is a user account inside Entra that is disabled or deleted, but still has permissions inside of the site collection. So we can see there's 3 such users, and 2 of them are disabled. 1 of them is a dead account. What we could do is go through and clean up that dead account if we want to. You've also got the unlicensed users, so they no longer have a SharePoint license, but they still have permissions. And we've also got unique permissions, which is a good one. If I run the unique permissions report, let's just drop a user in here, say demo user 4. I can generate a report that focuses on demo user 4, so I can see what groups that user's in, what site permissions, list permissions, and item permissions they have that have been granted to them inside of that site collection. So it's all in one place, and it's immediate. It's coming back straight away. Okay, so they're the type of reports that we can run here at the site collection level, and there's also all of the actions can be run at the site collection level as well. So you can do the transfer permissions, you can do the delete permissions, you can manage groups if you want to. So if you want to modify the group membership, we can determine who we want to check. I'll just run this against me, but I could add other users as well. In fact, let's just add demo user 4. Sorry, fingers up here. Okay, demo user 4. So let's just add that user in here, and it'll take me away and say retrieve the groups, and it's found what groups demo user 4 happens to be a member of in the scope of that site collection. So it's inside the accounts payable and so on. There's also a whole view about an individual user. So if I run this against Sandy, what we could do is have a look at her unique permissions. We can also have a look at her sharing links, her OneDrive permissions, and we can also have a look at site collections she's the owner of, which is a useful one. So this is useful for Sandy, but also useful for me. So if I decided that I wanted to switch out the ownership from Sandy to somebody else, this is something we can do. So I can go through and select each of these different site collections here and transfer the ownership to someone else. So we're not getting orphaned site collections if she was happening to leave or something along those lines. I've got to cover, and I want to talk about the new features. So there's a lot more that we can do from the central point of view in terms of reporting, in terms of actions as well. Those actions that you do perform, they're all captured here as well. So you've got a job log of everything that you performed with DeliverPoint. You can go and investigate what settings were in place when you perform those jobs, and then if you want to, this is where you can roll those jobs back if you allowed that to be the case. So I could hit the rollback, which is actually going to give demo user 9 their permissions back and take demo user 10 away. So we can roll that back at a later date if we need to. All right, let's just jump back to the slides for now, and I'll show you a bit more of DeliverPoint in a moment. So one of them is the scheduled permission reporting. So everything that you've seen so far is all on demand. It's using the Microsoft Graph behind the scenes, which means it's up to the minute live information. It's not stored anywhere. It's just produced on the fly when you produce those permission reports, which means there's the potential for you trying to run an extremely large permission report, maybe across thousands of sites or something like that, or you've got millions of documents in a document library somewhere, where it's not going to perform well in that scenario. So what you can do is schedule a permission report on a large scope or on a site with a lot of content and have that created in the back end. And the back end is optional. It's an Azure back end. It's using an Azure function and so on to produce the information that you need to see. The other reason is you just want the convenience of having a periodic permission report. So you can have a monthly permission report, quarterly permission report, and so on, meaning that you can go and set these up for your site owners, or site owners can set them up for themselves, or even at a site collection admin level, and you can have that report emailed to you, so you can go in and check it. So I'm just going to show you how we can go through and set those up, and then we'll have a look at some of the new features after that. So the schedule option appears almost everywhere in DeliverPoint. One of the places is on the shortcut menu here. So notice how we can schedule a discover permissions, we can schedule a sharing link report or a unique permissions report, and so on. And when we choose the schedule option, we can choose the frequency. So if we wanted a monthly report, we can choose what day and what time we want that to be generated on. We could schedule it for a specific person, or if we leave that blank, it's going to go to the site owner. We can email them when it's ready, and we can nominate where it's going to go. So you can nominate a library where that information will be stored, and we can choose what we want to include in it. So whether we want to include the sensitivity labels and all of those other things that you've been seeing as part of the report. You can also pre-filter it as well. So in here, you can look for external accounts. You can look for people with a certain permission level. You can look for people that are permissioned via a certain group, etc. Leaving that blank will just include every permission, and then we can hit schedule, and it's now scheduled to be completed. So you can access those scheduled reports by going to the main DeliverPoint page, and under the scheduled reports option, you'll see all the scheduled reports that you've created in the past that you have access to, and those that have completed will have a link to open them. And I'm going to try and choose a large one here. Yeah, this one here was, as you can see, it's run across 1,071 sites, and clicking on the link there, because it's static information, it opens up immediately. We're basically just reading a file. We're not performing a query at that stage. But what we have is an actionable report. So we can still filter. So if I was to filter on Brett, I can see what permissions Brett has, and there's all those sneaky Gmail accounts again showing up. So what I could do is go through, select them, and from the actions menu, we could come in and say, let's delete those permissions. So it's going to delete them, and we get to run that, and it will go through and remove them. So even though that was a snapshot report, it's still actionable. We're not having to jump back and forth to a CSV file and try to maintain what changes we've made. You can also schedule the reports here against multiple site collections. So like I say, if you wanted to go across a larger scope, we can choose entire site collections here, go to schedule, and then schedule any of these reports. So if you want to have a look for external users within inside of any of these site collections on a monthly basis, that's the sort of thing that you can do from that menu item, and then that report will be ready for you every month and emailed to you. Okay, so that's the scheduling option. There is a couple of other reports that I do just want to show. There's two here: the anyone sharing links and the everyone permissions. Going back to the Copilot thing, and also what you had available here in data access governance was the ability to look for anyone links or everyone permissions. And remember, it took 24 hours at least in order to be able to produce that for you. What you can do here is select an entire site collection or multiple site collections, so it doesn't have to run across the entire tenant. And you can either run that on a schedule. So every month you can have a anyone report or an everyone report, or you can run it on demand. So if I look for everyone permissions, this is the criteria that we're looking for. We'll hit generate, and it's found the human resources site. You actually saw me do this, where I granted everyone permissions at the human resources site, and we can see where else everyone is also permissioned on each of those different files as well. So you can run that on demand or as a scheduled report whenever you want to have it. And likewise with the anyone sharing links. So we can always have a look at that, find all the anyone sharing links and remove those if we want to. Okay, so again, just gonna have to sort of cut a little bit short on that because I want to show you the new features. So the new features of DeliverPoint, we are in the process of finalizing. One of them I can show you, the other one I cannot because it's just not done yet. It is on the back end, but not the UI. But you'll be able to see where it's going to be and what it's going to include. And then we'll also talk about what's coming next year as well with DeliverPoint. So in terms of auditing, what we're able to do now is track who made the changes and when. Now you've seen that a little bit, but what you saw was who made changes to sharing links. That we had anyway. Um, and we also have the ability to see who made changes using DeliverPoint. But if somebody just deletes permissions or grants permissions or makes somebody a member of a group or something along those lines, we weren't tracking that, and we now can. So I'll show you how we can do that. The other option is that you will be able to see who's accessed the sharing link. So let's say you see that there's an anyone sharing link against Bob's contract or whatever it was. The next question is, well, did anybody actually see it? Did anybody actually access it, even though it was available to anyone? And that's the information that we'll be able to go through and determine. There is a brand new tool as well for setting up the scheduled reporting. So you can download this from us. So by default, DeliverPoint is really easy to install. You just drag and drop the SPFX app into your app catalog and it's deployed. There was a challenge in actually setting up the sharing link reporting. Sorry, the scheduled reporting, because you needed to go through and manually provision certain Azure functions and things like that. That is now got some automation around it through a tool. So that makes your rollout of the scheduled reporting a lot easier. And then the future roadmap includes the ability to manually add sensitivity labels. And then that, of course, is going to have a knock-on effect to making life easier for IT to be able to report on content that is labeled or is not labeled. It's also going to improve Copilot in the fact that it's not going to serve things that are maybe marked as confidential and things like that, depending on what policies you put into place. So just have a look at some of these new features, and I'll also explain a bit better what's coming as well. So in terms of, let's just close a couple of these tabs. On the human resources site, I did actually already produce one of these reports, but I'm going to show you how to create one. So I can go to the reports menu, and under auditing, I can say audit permission changes. And I can choose the scope again. So it's recognizing that this is a hub site. Do I also want to include any associated sites to the hub? What's the start date and what's the end date? Now we can count down from today, so looking in the last week, or I could delete that and we get a calendar control. So I could say, yeah, looking into the last month or whenever it is. And the end date is today. I can choose what I want to include again, and we can hit generate, and it will start to put together that report for me, which probably takes about 10 minutes. Now, I'm not going to keep you on the call for 10 minutes. I'm going to jump back here to auditing. Let's open up a new tab. So activity auditing reports. So this one here is in progress. That's the one that we just kicked off. This one's complete. So let's just open it. And you can see the permission changes that have taken place. And we can see that it was demo user 6 who was modifying permissions on Evan Brown's contract. So they granted permissions. They created a sharing link with anyone. And they also created some limited access permissions as well. So we've got all the information that we need to be able to see who actually changed those permissions. Now, I want to show you one that's a bit more involved than that. So just going to go back to this Lightning Tools sales, and let's pull up the auditing reports there. You can see there's a few more here. So just put up that first one. And this is a bit more detailed, a few more changes going on. So we can see different people initiated different changes on these items with permissions. We can see the date that they did it. And we can see the type of change, so it's granting permissions mostly, the permissions that were granted, who did they grant them to, and when did they, so what IP address did they do it from? So all of that information is changes that occurred outside of DeliverPoint. This is just standard permission changes that are occurring, and we can go through and have a look at who changed those permissions. So who shared with the everyone group, if we need to see that information, and that of course is actually an educational opportunity to help people with how they go about sharing content. Let's just give that one a refresh, just see if by chance that's available. It's almost done. It's running. It's compiling it. So you can actually refresh the reports in here as well. Okay, we'll come back to that one in a moment. So the other thing that I'll talk about now, we'll just close that and come back to it in a second. So inside this employment contracts, if I run maybe a sharing link report, and we can see who somebody's shared, maybe with people in the organization, or better still, the anyone link. This is the bit that I can't show you, but I'll talk you through. We'll be able to select that from the report menu, come down to auditing, and say audit the links usage. And that will literally tell me who's accessed that file within a certain period. So again, we can give it a window. We can say in the last week or in the last month or whatever, who's actually accessed that content. And we'll be able to, of course, consider whether that was a security breach or whatever, based on that information. So these are two new changes. The other thing I wanted to point out that we are going to be making next year is around the labeling, the sensitivity labels. I've got the document information panel open, which incidentally you can open by clicking onto the details pane here. So that will open up the details pane, and you'll see here that we can set the sensitivity of these files. Once again, on the bulk edit properties, I can't bulk assign labels. So that is something that you will be able to do with DeliverPoint. We've got a small company going on here with a number of contracts. If we had 1,000 contracts in there, you would effectively be able to select all 1,000 contracts. You'll be able to choose the properties or however we're going to deliver this, and set the sensitivity label on that in one go. So that will help you to be more secure more quickly, meaning that Copilot isn't going to necessarily serve these contracts if anybody asks any questions about them using Copilot. All right, so that's where we're going with the product. I've got a few minutes left for questions. But just in summary, so what we're offering here with DeliverPoint is enhanced security and compliance. Obviously, we're empowering the business user, and you can take advantage of that and roll out this security conscious organization that can manage their own permissions inside their own site. It's going to help with the Copilot readiness, but security regardless of that. And it's also going to complement some of the purview reporting that you get, which is more high level. Of course, if we're managing content a lot better as site owners, then IT is going to have a better job when they're looking at purview to manage this centrally. So you've got improved governance without IT bottlenecks. And yet there's some trust radius examples that I was going to allude to, but we don't really have time. So call to actions. If you like what you see, I've only really scratched the surface with DeliverPoint today, highlighting the key features. But if you want to book a demo, we can go into more depth. You can do that on our website, and that will be with myself. You can get to my calendar, and we'll be able to deliver that demonstration. There is a 30-day trial if you want to use this inside your own environment. It's fully featured. Just drag and drop into your app catalog, and you'll have the product running in your environment, where you'll be able to start reporting and managing some of those permissions as well, and see what the tool can do for you. Or of course, just reach out on help@lightlytools.com or brett@lightlytools.com, sales@lightlytools.com, if you want to ask any questions there as well. All right, so there is some questions I think I've addressed for you now, Gary. Okay. So yeah, another question is, if you see sharing links for a current site, but they are not showing, uh, sorry, for that location when you use discover permissions, inherited permissions were broken, are the sharing links still active or valid? So if I'm running the sharing links report at the site level, that will include any active sharing links within inside the site. Yep. Um, they should also show up inside that discover permissions report as well, but it may not be as obvious to you. So the discover permissions show as a group. So the group has a GUID in it. So if you are looking for sharing link reports, it's best to run the sharing link report specifically to find those items. But yeah, both reports will include the sharing links. Um, But of course, that also depends on what the discover permissions scope is. So the discover permissions scope, if that is the site only, then it's only going to look at if the site has been shared. If you're running the sharing link report, then that actually spans the entire site. So I can see where that confusion may come from as well. So hopefully that answers that question. When will the two new audit report features be available? So we're hoping for end of this month, which probably means January by the time it's pushed out and available. So we'll be doing a release, but we will notify you and let you know that is available as well. So yeah, it is due imminently. You'll have those options available. There's some questions in the chat as well. Okay, so question about licensing. Um, so licensing works is license on the number of users in the tenant, which is in line with the licensing for things like SharePoint Advanced Management and so on as well. But let me just give you an idea of what that looks like. So we're not $3 per user per month, we're $2.40 per user per year, with a base price of $19.50. So everybody pays the $19.50, and then it's $2.40 per user per year after that for every SharePoint license user inside the tenant. That does scale down if we go over the 10,000 users. So yeah, we can provide a quotation if you are over that number. Another question is SharePoint Advanced Management and comparing to that. So how does the licensing differ? So yeah, SharePoint Advanced Management is included with E5 now. It's also included with Copilot. That I think is a little bit vague at the moment as to is there a minimum of how many Copilot licenses you need and so on. I don't know the answer to that. It was only announced a couple of weeks ago at Microsoft Ignite. But again, the problem of sharing and permissions is not just Copilot specific. So you may want to manage permissions without having Copilot licenses, in which case DeliverPoint would perhaps be a favorable option in terms of cost and the number of features. But yeah, of course, if you want to run those sharing link reports and it doesn't matter to you that it's taking 24 hours at least to produce them, then SharePoint Advanced Management could also be another option if you happen to be rolling out Copilot anyway. Data and where is that stored? Isn't that a security risk? So yeah, DeliverPoint, once again, probably this question was asked before I explained it. But yeah, the data is called by the graph. So we're producing a SharePoint framework solution into your environment through the app catalog. It's not running in our environment. It's everything is entailed with inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. So there's nothing that leaves your tenant. Without the scheduled permission reports, there is nothing stored. It's just using the graph API in order to be able to make those graph calls to be able to put the produce the permission reports. If you use the scheduled permission reporting, then that will use your Azure tenant for the functions, where again nothing is stored. It's producing the permission report where you nominate the library that it's going to go into. So that would be at best stored within inside a hidden library within inside a site you get to nominate. Performance, what is the performance like? Can it scale to enterprise level? Yep. So because the nature of it, you're not trying to do everything at the enterprise level like SharePoint Advanced Management is. What we're doing here is looking where we want to report. Where we want to report might be across multiple files and folders, or it might be across multiple sites. So that even in an enterprise organization could be large or small. If you did, and a small business could actually have a lot of content. A small business could have hundreds of millions of items in a document library, for argument's sake. That will cause DeliverPoint to slow down in order to produce the permission report on that content. And that's the reason why we have the scheduled permission reporting, which isn't at an extra cost. So that will be included. You just need to install it, and then that will allow you to report not in real time, but still capture the information that you need to see. Okay, question: how does DeliverPoint handle Active Directory crawl errors, and what steps should be taken if the service is interrupted and fails to gather information from the authentication store? So that's probably a question because you're in the on-prem environment. So what we have for DeliverPoint on premises is a number of timer jobs that crawl the information from the Active Directory. That's stored inside a SQL database, and then we're reporting against that SQL database. So that's not applicable to this one whatsoever with the SharePoint Online permissions tool version that we've had a look at today. So yeah, if there is Active Directory crawl errors, they would be for SharePoint on premises, that would be captured inside the log files. You'll be able to see that information there. All right, great. I think there's some fantastic questions that have been asked there. So if there's any more, feel free to reach out on, again, brett@lightningtools.com. I'd be happy to answer them. I know we've gone over by 6 minutes, so for those of you that have stayed on, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you found this useful. If you would like a demo or anything like that, once again, just simply go onto our website, hit book a demo, and you'll be able to book in at a time that's convenient to you, and we'll be able to get into more depth and look at solving your specific problems with our permissions tool. All right, thanks again, and hopefully see you in the new year, and wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, or whatever you want to say. But yeah, hope you have a great time, and see you in 2025. Many thanks. Bye-bye.